Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man walah wa ba'd. All praise due to Allah and His praise and blessings and peace be upon our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, his family, his companions and his followers until the day of judgment. I bear witness that Allah is the only one worthy of worship and Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam his last and final messenger. Inshallah ta'ala, I don't know how long it's going to take us, but for the coming weeks and months, hope inshallah this year, we will be focusing on explaining a book that it is one of its kind. This book is it's called Bulugh Al Maram fi Hadith al-Ahkam. And originally I thought about Umdat al-Ahkam, but I decided to Bulugh Al Maram because it's much available in English and because it is more effective from different perspectives. What's this is about? There is a type of collections of hadith known as Hadith al-Ahkam, the hadith that speaks about the Islamic fiqh rulings. So the Imam or the scholar will take a chapter and he will mention all the ahadith that speak about this concept. So in zakat, in salah, in tahara, in hajj, in business transactions. So he will get every book, the hadith, and he will mention the hadith that basically that this chapter is based on. And the most famous books that ever written in regard to this topic or this methodology or this methods are 5 books. The first one by Imam Abdul Ghani al-Maqdisi rahimahullah, which is Umdatul Ahkam fi Kalami Khayr al-Anam. And it is not it's a very famous book. It's a good collections, good size. Then you have also another book which is a little bit larger. It's called Al-Muntaqa من أحاديث الأحكام للمجد ابن تيمية أبي البركات رحمه الله تعالى. And it's a very famous book and been explained by no one other than Imam al-Shawkani رحمه الله في نيل الأوطار في شرح منتقى الأخبار. It's encyclopedia in itself, that explanation, very deep, by a great Yemeni scholar, his name is Shawkani. Then you have another book which is considered the main source for anyone who speak about this topic, which is al-Ilmam fi Ahadith al-Ahkam للإمام الشافعي ابن دقيق العيد رحمه الله. The book Al-Ilmam is considered number one reference. Everybody came after him, start copying his work. Also, there is another famous book, very famous. It's called Al-Muharrar لشمس الدين عبد الهادي ibn Abdul Hadi rahimahullah. Also very famous book. But the last one that I have, which is I choose to teach from whatever chapters we can cover, is Bulugh Al Maram min Ahadith al-Ahkam, written by al-Hafidh ibn Hajar al-Asqalani rahimahullah ta'ala. And it was explained by another Yemeni scholar, his name al-Amir al-San'ani rahimahullah ta'ala. This book by Ibn Hajar rahimahullah has several advantages in my opinion. One, the amount of ahadith that he mentioned, way more than Umdat al-Ahkam and others. Also the way he organized the ahadith are very unique. The chapters that he included are very unique than any other book before. And one of the things that he added in the end of the book, he added a whole chapter about akhlaq, mannerism. Even though he's speaking about fiqh, but he ended up with mannerism. And he spoke beautiful ahadith about the etiquettes and manners. And to tell you that Islam is not only about what's halal and haram and what's the fiqh rulings are you're not allowed to pray this way and to fast that way, but also part of our religion is to know how to conduct ourselves with others and how to deal with them and what the manners that the Muslim should have. It's not enough to pray on time, but also you have to be on time. When you make a promise with someone, it's not enough to perfect your wudu, but also you need to perfect your tongue and to purify your heart. And I thought this is very unique from him, rahimahullah ta'ala. Ibn Hajar is an amazing scholar when it comes to the way he narrates the hadith, the way he chooses the hadith. And sometimes he will not narrate the hadith completely, he chooses from it what it basically fit the topic that at hand. So I hope inshallah ta'ala we will enjoy studying it. Why did I choose a book of hadith to teach, not a book of fiqh? Why did I choose a collection of hadith speaking about fiqh instead of going to fiqh directly? Books of fiqh more focused, more precise, much clearer, but it can be a lot boring for people to study, especially those who are not specialized in Sharia. Because basically he takes the concept of wudu, then he breaks it down to every detail. Issue of purification, so raw, just text, like a textbook. But al-hadith, it has a story, it contains so many other topics as well. Yes, we're going to focus on the ruling of the tahara, but there is a story behind it. There is much to learn from the hadith of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam beside the ruling itself. So it's more entertaining when it comes to learning. More of, everybody can benefit from it. You will find things that has to do with fiqh, to do with manners, to do with aqidah. You will find the hadith so rich. Yes, we're not going to focus on every aspect because that's going to be like too much of explanation. But we will have a lot of interesting benefits to learn from hadith in Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The other reason, because I believe إسماع حديث رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم في ذاته عبادة. Hearing the Prophet ﷺ's ahadith and listening to it, it's an act of worship. But you're not going to get this by listening to what this Hanbali or Maliki or Hanafi or Shafi'i said. There is ibadah in learning the knowledge, but just listening and reading ahadith in Nabi ﷺ, there is barakah in it. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to put barakah in this gathering and these classes. And because I have not announced that earlier, today I'm not going to start with the book. But I would like to, after this short introduction, I give you also short introduction about who is Ibn Hajar rahimahullah. So you understand who the person that we're talking about. Ibn Hajar, known as al-Hafidh. Al-Hafidh, here today we say Hafidh means what? Hafidh al-Quran, that's right, like so Hafidh. But in the old days, it's obvious, if you're a scholar, you hafidh al-Quran. And not he's only memorized the Quran, he memorized the Quran bil-qira'at al-ashr in 2 different qira'as. And he is an imam in this area. But also, Ibn Hajar rahimahullah took the title al-Hafidh. And usually this person who get that title, it means he memorized or she memorized at least 100,000 hadith. لا يطلق لقب الحافظ على من يحفظ أقل من 100,000 hadith. So if he doesn't memorize 100,000 narrations, wouldn't get that title. So you talk about someone in very high caliber. He was born in Sha'ban in February 13, 1372. In 1372. And he died, rahimahullah, in 1449, also in February. He born in February 13, died in February 22. So he lived about around 80 years, I believe. He comes from a very distinguished family. His father was a great scholar himself, Nur al-Din Ali ibn Muhammad. He was a scholar in Arabic language. He was a poet. He was a scholar in history. Was mainly focused on Al-Quran, and he used to teach Al-Quran and give ijaza in the different qira'at. He lived next in Mecca for a while before he goes back to Egypt. Originally Ibn Hajar from Asqalan. Where is Asqalan? Anybody knows? Where is Asqalan? Huh? In Gaza. Asqalan, huh? Palestine. So Asqalan is Palestine. Why would he be there? A lot of families moved from Palestine to Egypt after the Crusader time. So you'll find a lot of family moved to Egypt after that, after the Crusaders occupied the land of Palestine. Anyway, so he moved long time ago, his family, to Egypt. And as I said, he was born by the bank of the Egyptian river. His father died when Ibn Hajar was 4 years old. Also, he lost his mother. His mother, her name is Nijar al-Ziftawi, very Egyptian name. Nijar bint al-Fakhr al-Ziftawi. If there is anything about this woman, that she was one of the most extremely rich women in Egypt. She is unbelievably rich. She inherited unbelievable amount of wealth from her father, and she also from her husband, previous husband who died. And add to this, Ibn Hajar's father was also a very rich man. Has a lot of business, trade, real estate, you name it. So Ibn Hajar born to an extremely rich family. Money is not an issue for Ibn Hajar rahimahullah. He has a tremendous amount of wealth when he was born. He basically raised as an orphan, and this is lessons that we can learn from, that his father, his father before he died, he asked a person a wasi, he wrote in his will that so and so, and we're going to talk about him in a little bit, in charge of my son. He take care of my son, look after my son, and that person is basically Abu Bakr ibn Muhammad al-Kharrubi. He was a very famous businessman. Smart to choose a businessman to take care of your son, so the business will be looked after until your son grow old. He had a sister. His sister, she's 3 years older than him. She was born in their trip to Mecca, and she was born in the way to Mecca, and that's why they call her Sittul Rakb. In Egypt, this is very famous way of saying, giving title for women. Sittul Kul, Sittul Nas, Sittul Husn, the lady of the caravan, the Sittul Rakb. And he said, Hiya ummi ba'da ummi. My older sister, she's the one who really raised me. She's like my mother, took good care of me. Min ajibi haliha, his sister, she had a daughter, her name Fawz. Ibn Hajar rahimahullah said, I never seen anything like this in my life. قال ما رأيت في حياتي شيئا أعجب منها. Yani what is his sister's daughter? His niece. Very good, you guys awake. So he said, my niece, she became insane. كانت مجنونة. لا تفيق إلا عند وقت الصلاة. When the salat times comes, she go back complete to her sanity. She will make wudu, she will pray perfectly. فإذا سلمت, if she said السلام عليكم ورحمة الله, السلام عليكم ورحمة الله, finish the salah, she go back crazy. Insane. She's completely insane. Not a sane person, mad person. He said, I never seen anything in my life like that until she died in Mecca, and she used to live in Mecca. Anyway, his sister also died when he was about 25 years old, and he was very moved by that, and he wrote poetry about it. His uncle, his grandfather, all those members of his family, they were known to be very knowledgeable people, and Ibn Hajar witnessed the death of all his family members, brothers, sisters, and two of his half-brothers also died. As I said, he, rahimahullah, basically was taken care of by this man whose father appointed. And that's something we can learn from it today. that you should, if you want to write in your will, that who will take care of your kids, who will look after them, and this person willing to do that, especially in case of both parents die, especially here in the law, if you both parents die, basically the kids will go to the foster home unless you decide who will take care of them. This man al-Kharrubi really did take good care of him, rahimahullah ta'ala, since he was 5 years old, because Ibn Hajar's mother died when Ibn Hajar was about few months old. When he became 12 years old, he finished Hifdh al-Quran. So al-Kharrubi decided to take him to Mecca so he can read Quran with the scholars of Mecca. And he did. He spent 2 years. And when he was 14 years old, he led Taraweeh in Mecca, rahimahullah ta'ala. He became very famous. He heard the hadith, the book that I mentioned earlier, al-Ahkam, when he was about 14 years old. And he studied Sahih al-Bukhari, Muslim, at-Tirmidhi, and you name it. He basically became exposed to so many books in Fiqh and in Hadith and so forth. After that, the man who was looking after him died, but he also wrote in his will, because he's still a teenager, that a man by the name of Shamsuddin ibn al-Qattan, also very famous businessman, to take care of this young man. At that time, he suggested for him to get married, and he got married, rahimahullah ta'ala, when he was about 25 years old, to a woman. I like her name. Her name is Uns. His wife, her name is Uns. Uns, it means like the one who give you a good company, make you happy. Huh? Yeah, fine, fun, her name is like kind of fun. A person who's fun to be around. She is a daughter of a chief judge in Egypt, and also her father and her family, rich family in Egypt as well. He really took good care of his wife, and he taught her al-ilm. Can you qri'ha? You listen to the hadith. He took her to Mecca to meet his older shuyukh, and she studied under his teachers. She took ijazas in the books of hadith. And she became so into the scholarly, she became like so into the knowledge that one day he was listening to her. She used to teach Sahih al-Bukhari in her house. His own students, like Sakhawi and others, used to go to her class and to his class. And sometimes they would prefer her class, over his because of al-Iqra. Then one day he decided to listen to her when she was teaching Sahih al-Bukhari. When she finished, he said, Anti Shaykha. He said, you are Shaykha. I give you, I admit it. Rahimahullah ta'ala. She got him 5 children. All of them were girls. Zayn Khatun, one of them. Farha, Ghaliya. And the 4th one, he called her Rabi'a, which it means the 4th. Okay? So it fits. Who has this? Shraim, Sheikh Saud al-Shraim, the Imam of Medina. He got his 4th daughter on Al-Arbi'a, which is the 4th day in the week, at 4 a.m. And she's the 4th daughter. Just 4 things. That's why he called her Rabi'a, the 4th. So anyway, Ibn Hajar also called his daughter 4th, Rabi'a. And also he had Fatima. Later on, when he was about 31 years old, he married another woman, but didn't go well between them. She's a widow, and got him a daughter, her name Amina. But Amina got sick when she was infant because of plague in Egypt and died. And he said, that's it. It didn't work between us, and he divorced her. Never married again, but still the idea, I guess, in his head. One of the things that he thought, he needs to have a son to inherit his knowledge and to carry his name and his legacy. And at that time, people have this mentality that, it's like you marry a woman, the woman who's basically will get you the boy. They don't know that this is the man who's responsible for, the boy or the girl. When he was in Syria, he introduced to this woman, her name Layla al-Halabiyya, she's from Aleppo. She's older woman. She has already 2 adult sons. But for some reason, he fell in love with her and he loved her. He stayed in Aleppo about 100 days with the Sultan, with the king at that time, invited him to go, teaching, learning, and he married Layla. After he finished his time in Aleppo, the king asked him to go back. So he's going back to Mecca. And it didn't seem to be, she doesn't want to leave, whatever the case, they decide to get separated. Al-Ajib, yani, without going into details, he said, I couldn't ever face her and tell her that I divorce you. I was very weak to do that. So he decided to divorce her in the court with the judge and left the paperwork with the judge with all the money and the requirements of divorce. But he said, I couldn't face her with that. And he left. She was informed about the divorce later on. He said, I couldn't rest. In Mecca, I'm making tawaf, I'm making salah in Mecca. I couldn't think of anyone more than her. قال فأصبح ليلي ليلى. So my nights was all about her, and can't do that. He married her again, or asked her to marry her again. She agreed, and she moved to Egypt, because in the beginning she doesn't want to move to Egypt, whatever the case was. And she didn't like Egypt, and she didn't like the life there. She lived with him 5 years, and after 5 years she told him, divorce me. She asked for a divorce. And he divorced her. This is the second divorce. She went to Aleppo. After a year, he basically tried again, and they married again, third time, until he died, rahimahullah ta'ala. And she inherited him, but he never got children from her. Anyway, he always had this idea that he wanted to marry someone that give him a child. So he decided to marry a woman that she used to work for his first wife. And he decided to do that, and he told his first wife to just fire her. She doesn't work with her anymore. And she did. She doesn't know what the deal. And he married that Kurdish lady. And that's, until today, a lot of Arabs I know, they think of Kurdish ladies are ladies that they always get pregnant and get boys. This is like myth that they have. But guess what? He married her, and she got him the boy that he wants. Al-Ajib, and he got a boy when he was older at that time, rahimahullah ta'ala. And he made the aqiqah of his boy in his first wife's house without her knowing that this is her husband's boy. And when she found out, it was a big mess in the house, but she forgave him. And actually, their love is unbelievable, her and him. He died in his first wife's lap, rahimahullah ta'ala. Anyway, all this instability in his life, for me, it shows, I share this with you to know, he's just a human being. Sometimes when we talk about scholars, we think of them as like something ideal. You know what? They have problems like us. They get divorced, and they get married, and they get remarried, and they're just like any one of us. The human aspect of it are human. They have business and things goes wrong. He get rich, he get old. But Imam, what made these scholars very great is their contributions, is their participation, is the knowledge that they had. Ibn Hajar rahimahullah, one of his students, al-Biqa'i said, I spent 12 years with Ibn Hajar. 12 years. أقسم بالله, I swear by Allah, ما مرت بي سنة, none of these years I have spent with him, إلا ازداد تواضعا علي أني لم أزد له إلا مهابة لا يزيده السن إلا وقارا ولينا ونفعا لعباد الله. Allah is my witness that every year goes by, he's down to earth, he's humble, even though his level is higher every year in my eyes. The older he gets, the more respectful, the more easy, the more beneficial he is to the people. the more generous to his students. لا تشغله دنياه على اتساعها عن الاشتغال بالعلم والتصنيف. Even though he was extremely rich, never distracted him from seeking knowledge and teaching and writing, وقيام الليل, and making night prayer. قال ما رأيت أحدا شيخا ولا شابا إلا وهو يتعجب من أحواله ويشهد له بالبركة في أوقاته. I haven't seen anyone, old or young, who get to know Ibn Hajar unless that person would say, he is amazing how much barakah Allah put in his time. He said, even though he's very knowledgeable, he's very aware of his surrounding, but he's amazing في تغافله عن هفوات الناس. He doesn't pick on people. في غاية اليقظة لا يسلم قياده لأحد. آية في حسن القضاء. He was an amazing judge. He lived in a time, it's called the Mamluki time. The Mamluki time, if there is anything I want to say about this time, it's a time when there is a lot of money in Egypt, there is a lot of knowledge, the country or the government respected scholars a lot and provided a lot for people. Also, there is a lot of masajid built. Just to give you an idea, at that time, Egypt became the center of the world. Why? Why Egypt became the heart of the world, the center of the world? Because the Muslims in Spain lost al-Andalus in Spain, kicked out, and in North Africa, in Morocco, there were a very aggressive leader, his name Ibn Tomart. He really was very aggressive, anti anybody who doesn't agree with him. He killed people, and scholars couldn't live in that environment. So they moved away from North Africa, and they were worried that their crusaders will cross the sea all the way to Morocco. They will continue the crusade voyage. This is what happened in the West. So people moved towards the Middle East. What happened in the East? This is now goes back in the same time where Andalus falling. What's happening in the East? The Mughal came and destroyed Baghdad, the Khilafah's capital. That's why the Khalifa came and lived in Egypt for a while. So in the East, everything wiped out. In the West, everything basically wiped out under threat. And the Crusader in Palestine. So scholars and family and books and money and trade, all of them, where the safe haven became what? Egypt. That's why there is incredible amount of wealth, incredible amount of trade, incredible amount of population, overpopulated Egypt. In Cairo, at that time, they estimated 1,000 mosques in Cairo. Just at that time, this is like 1,300. That's incredible when it comes to the number. Also, that led the Muslim scholar at that time realized interesting fact. It's important for us today. What did they learn? They learned after burning the beautiful libraries of Al-Andalus and throwing the books of Baghdad in the rivers to the river became ink. The color of the ink is famous. The scholars realized that the ilm cannot be preserved by books only. You know how knowledge of Islam was preserved in the beginning? Memorizing it, memorizing the Quran, memorizing the Hadith, that's right. Then after that, people start relaxing and relying on books. Okay? Khalas, we have it documented. But when they came and they wiped out the libraries, taking the books and ditching them in the river or burning them in Spain, the Muslim found this a threat to Islam here. That's why at that time where Ibn Hajar lived, like talk about 50 years before his born, 100 years after his time, in that era where the scholars start reviving the concept of memorizing the hadith and having isnad and documenting the knowledge. That's why you see, for example, people lived around his time. Al-Imam al-Birzali, for example, he will revival that concept that he had 3,000 teachers. He heard the hadith from 3,000 teachers. Al-Imam al-Muzzi, more than 1,000 teachers. So every scholars became traveling to hear the hadith from this man and that man, and they start documenting this the same way it was in the first couple of hundred of years after the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Al-Imam ibn Hajar rahimahullah studied under one of the most important scholars of his time, Zainuddin al-Iraqi, and he helped him a lot, as well as many others of his teacher rahimahullah. Muhammad ibn Yahya, also one of his teachers, that who encouraged him not to memorize the hadith only by to study fiqh. You know, being a rich person make you independent. Why? In his time, I have to give a little bit of background if that's okay with you guys. The Mamluki states came after the Fatimi states. Fatimi states is an extreme Shi'i states, okay, or known as the Ubaydi. What the Fatimi did, one of the things they did, they forbade teaching any one of the madhahib, Hanafi, Shafi'i, Malik. If they find you teach this, they will prosecute you. You will be in trouble with the government. So basically, they completely against any madhab. Okay? So people kept the madhab, Shafi'i, Maliki, Hanafi, Hanbali, hidden in secret. It was taught in basement, as we say. When that states fall apart, Salah ad-Din came and destroyed it. Okay? What happened? People revival these four madhahib back. That's right. And in order for you to be Sunni, it means you belong to one of these four madhabs. Otherwise, you are among the Shia, the Fatimis, who don't believe in the four madhab. That's why we, us today, in 21st century, we always hear, you have to follow madhab, because that was a reaction habit at that time, because non-madhab, it's equal to being Shi'i, with his against the Sunni traditions. Because that's what the Shia is basically promote. They were against something it's called madhab. So here you have these madhabs and followers, and they became very eager to support their own madhabs. طيب, if I have a school that is Hanafi or Shafi or Maliki, what happened? Schools were not free. Schools for money. A lot of people don't know that. I'm in al-Maghrib Institute. We charge classes and put money. People say, oh, ilm is like charge money for knowledge. Yeah, it's been always the case, actually. You know, all schools in the old days, they charge money for it. So in order for you to go to study, that's why there is awqaf to help the students to pay for their expenses. Anyway, so in order for you to do that, you need to be Shafi'i to be able to accept it in a Shafi'i school as a student or as a teacher. Even if you're not going to teach fiqh, even if you're going to teach Arabic language, you need to be Shafi'i to be, or why? Because the waqf, endowment, whoever made the waqf, he said, this endowment for the Shafi'i people. This endowment only giving to Hanafi students, only giving to this Maliki students. So that means if I live in a place and I want to study, I have to follow that madhab in order to benefit financially from the endowment. But if you are rich, you can go study with your own money and you become what? An independent. That's what when I say Ibn Hajar became very independent person because he's rich. He doesn't need their money. He doesn't need their position. He doesn't need their teaching position. He can get his own money, rahimahullah. Also, Ibn Hajar being rich make him generous, and generous people are loved by people. You know, in some of the stories about him, whenever he see a poor person, he used to hide handfuls of money and give it to people. Like he will put his hand and fill his hand with gold and pass it on. كان يعطي بال200 درهم في المرة الواحدة. 200 pieces of silver at one time. He take it and he give it to the poor person. He doesn't count the money when he gives. You can't do that if you're not rich. Also, being rich allowed him to travel the world. Being rich allowed him to purchase a lot of books, rahimahullah ta'ala, and really helped them very well. Ibn Hajar is the best example for me to a code that I believe in when it comes to money, which is al-mal khadimun jayyid wa sayyidun fasid. Al-mal is an excellent servant and a corrupt master. A lot of people say, no, money is the sa'udhu billah, dunya. You know what? Money is a very good servant and a very corrupt master. That قال تعس عبد الدينار. If it became your master, you're a loser. The Prophet said, he said, this loser, the one who take the gold and silver as his master and became a slave to them. He, rahimahullah, was tested with many tests in his life. And definitely this instability in marriages and life, that's test. But also one of the hard tests about this man, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tested him with so many people, peers, they envied him so much. They spoke ill of him so much. With the government, with people. At one point, Ibn Hajar was the chief judge, was the imam of the biggest mosque in Egypt, al-Qal'a, and al-Muqattam, if somebody knows Egypt. At one point, he's the head of the biggest library in Egypt. He was the head of the most important school in Egypt, al-Baybarasiyya, the dean of it. Everything you can think of, you know, he was basically the khatib, he's in charge. Just in a few, after they start talking bad about him, these peers, he lost every single position that he had. He was basically stripped from all titles, rahimahullah ta'ala. They spoke so ill of him, took poetry, made poetry about him. And العجيب, يعني some of them, they are his students. Some of them, they became judge because he interceded for them to be judge. And they took that position as a judge and started speaking bad about him. يعني خيرا تعمل شرا تلقى. Good to do to people, they use that good that you did to them to fight back, to hurt you with it. But rahimahullah ta'ala, he was very dignified person. He cared for the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam to the extent that he wrote more than 170 books in hadith. He wrote how many? 170 books in hadith. He studied under 644 teachers. His shuyukh, 644. Among them, 55 women. Among his teachers. That shows you what kind of society that he lived in. Rahimahullah ta'ala. I just want to give you just example. This is not fair to speak about him in this rush, in just short period of time. He wrote a book when he was 30 years old. This is his first official book. It's called Taghliq al-Ta'liq. One of the modern days researcher did a study on that book. This is one of his first earliest books. Okay? He made a study on it to see how many references he used in that book. We found that he used 350 references in that book. You remember it? I told you it's the biggest library in the world in Egypt at that time. He has access to it. Rahimahullah ta'ala. I can tell you in the science of hadith, he is the leading scholar. He's Shafi'i, but in the same times, he was not a blind follower. Whenever he sees that there is strong evidence, even against the Shafi'i madhab, he will take and give you just many examples. I don't know if I need to give example now, but I will just move on. Rahimahullah ta'ala. Ibn Hajar, rahimahullah, if there is anything I want to say, he was a very talented person. Like what? He has a very sharp memory. He memorized Surah Maryam in one night. One time he prayed Isha, like you guys prayed here. Some of you maybe randomly prayed here. So once he prayed in a masjid, and the Imam of the masjid was reading from a book it called at-Targhib wa-Tarhib by Imam al-Mundhiri rahimahullah. This book, Imam al-Mundhiri's book, made of 27 chapters, contain 5,821 hadith. 5,821 hadith. Just random. An incident, just never planned. So the Shaykh was reading from the book and he skipped some of the ahadith. Then Ibn Hajar waited, and after everybody left, he said, hold on, come on. He said, by the way, you missed this hadith and you missed this hadith in this chapter. You missed this narration and this narrator, you skipped his name, and he started correcting him. This book, Al-Mundhir, al-Targhib, is a random book too. Like it's not one of the most important books in the Sunnah. For him to have that fresh memory, it's just unbelievable. He used to read very fast. If you get chance, we have a copy from Sunan Nasa'i. He finished Sunan Nasa'i في 4 majalis, in 4 sittings. That's like over 1,500 pages today, in 4 sittings. He used to read very fast, rahimahullah ta'ala. He stayed in Damascus 2 months. They said he read in 2 months more than 100 volumes of book, أكثر من 100 مجلد in its library. So he's a fast reader, has a good memory, and he writes very fast. Whatever he writes in a day, it takes people a week to write. So he's a fast writer. And one thing I want to say to us, Ibn Hajar, Allah gave him all these talents, but he used it very well. Many of us so talented as well, but we never use these talents. We never use it to contribute. Ibn Hajar used everything Allah giving to him to give back. You know, I read somewhere once that talents are Allah's gift to us, or God's gift to us. That's how I read it. What we do with them is our gift back to Allah. So that's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give each and every one of us an ability to do so much. He's also has a very good management over his time. Never waste his time, rahimahullah ta'ala. He used to carry a mushaf. You know, in the old days, they never had a pocket in their thobes. These are newly invented. You know where's the pockets in the old days? Ammar should know and Rami should know. In the sleeves. They put the things here. Like if they want to carry something, they put it here. So they carry it in their sleeves. This is their pockets. Everything. Okay. That's why Abu Hurairah carry his cat here. So everything. It's like it's a big sleeve. So rahimahullah, he used to carry a mushaf, small mushaf. So one time the door was locked. He pulled the mushaf, was reading it until they fixed the door. He would not let anything goes without basically utilizing it. Also, one of the things that he was very interesting, that he cared for people. And the people he cared for the most, his family. His wife, he taught her the knowledge. His children, his daughters, he give them ijazah. He basically helped them. His students, he used to pay for his students to travel with him to Mecca for Hajj, for Umrah, to go visit Damascus, Yemen. He always used to do that, rahimahullah ta'ala. One of the things that he cared is the social issues. He talked about a lot of issues related to business, related to innovations, practices that was not good, like, for example, how the orphans treated, how widows are treated in the society. He cared, and he spoke on behalf of them to the ruler at that time. One of the things that also I want to say, that he was very friendly, rahimahullah. He used to joke with his students. One time he went to the pyramids, al-Ahramat. So they climbed the pyramid to have dinner. So while they are sitting up high, one of the students came and he covered his face and he acted like a gang or like a robber, like a thief. So Ibn Hajar gets scared because that area, from what you read in the books, it's like isolated. It's like out the city. SubhanAllah, today, by the way, al-Ahramat, the neighborhood of where the pyramids are, is not a safe neighborhood until today. So he kind of gets scared and he thought this is one of the thugs coming to basically to them. And this guy start climbing with the stick. So Ibn Hajar gets scared. He said, "What is the Qibla?" And he looked at the Qibla and he said, "Allahu Akbar." And he said, "At least if he comes to kill us, he finds me praying and kill me while praying." The students were laughing while he's praying, laughing. فأنهى صلاته سريعة. He made the salah short and he looked, "What are you laughing at?" Then he found that the guy who's like covering his face, one of his students, he started laughing with them. You know, it might be something like for you, it doesn't sound very interesting, but for me, what it sounded is how the students have the guts even to joke with him this way. That shows you what kind of personality he had. An easygoing person, a person that they can joke with. They can, you know, like what do we call it today? Brink, like, you know, him. See, that takes a lot of being so close to the students, to the people. Rahimahullah ta'ala. He loved sugar. He used to eat sugar a lot. It's interesting that everybody compliment him about his beautiful white, perfect teeth, even though he eats a lot of sugar. He liked sugar cane. It's on his face. He used to eat them and to suck the sugar. You know, I don't know if you guys ever had sugar cane in your life or not, but something I used to do. Rahimahullah ta'ala, they estimated the people who al-Bulqani said at least 150,000 people attended his funeral. That's a large number of people at that time. Princes, governors, judges, students, average people, everybody walk in his janazah, rahimahullah ta'ala, because he was loved so much by the people because he cared for them, rahimahullah. I just want to say like these few words about Ibn Hajar, rahimahullah, because we're going to be studying his book. I can tell you in the end that Ibn Hajar, in my opinion, is the real founder for the modern science of hadith. I have no doubt in my heart that he is the real founder for the modern science of hadith. He took the lead in every aspect in science of hadith. Explaining the text, his work in Fath al-Bari, Sahih al-Bukhari, which it took him more than 20 years to do, is a role model. His book, Bulugh Al Maram, in a hadith that we're going to study, is absolutely one of the best books written in this area. His book in Mustalah al-Hadith, the terminologies of the hadith, Nuzhat al-Nadar, an explanation by him, also Nukhbat al-Nadar, is the leading book in this area. What he put as the science of al-Rijal, how to judge the biography or how to judge the narrators, Ilm al-Jarh wa al-Ta'dil, his work on it is the foundation for every scholar until today. So in every area you look, you see him taking the lead, rahimahullah ta'ala. So I'm very honored to teach and to explain one or part of his work, or at least part of his work. We'll go chapter by chapter, and as we go, we'll see how you guys are excited about it. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to put barakah in our time and our effort. And with this, we'll come to the conclusion of our talk tonight. And inshallah, see you next week. It's called